Well, Benjamin Netanyahu telling our own Megyn Kelly that he hopes to work with the United States. UN watcher Claudia Rosett says he may feel differently when Israel starts getting hung out to dry by the United States. Explain, Claudia.
Well, taking anything like this to the United Nations, what we're seeing actually at this point are at least two likely end runs around both Congress, precedents that have been very important in our alliance with Israel, and that is basically the U.S. has run interference at the UN for Israel for a long time for very important reasons. The United Nations is not a forum friendly to democratic states. It's profoundly hostile to them in many instances and devotes an immense amount of its energy and time to condemning Israel while overlooking things that are serious threats to us, to the Israelis, to the free world. And Neil, the idea here is that this will pressure Israel to make peace with the Palestinians. Well, the reality is part of the Palestinian territory isn't occupied by Israel. It is governed by, it's occupied as governed by Hamas, a terrorist group sworn in its charter to obliterate Israel, which just last summer was at war with Israel. And under the nose of a UN agency there, the UN Relief and Works Agency that sends them relief, which basically supports Hamas, watched Hamas dug miles of attack tunnels into Israel. The UN either never noticed or never sounded the alarm.
Well,
so
you know, but Claudia, it comes at an interesting time that we're now the fear that we might add to this or we're more salt in that UN wound by being those who applied the salt. This was something that Megyn raised with Benjamin Netanyahu in her interview. I want you to listen to this.
Yeah.
In the wake of your statements earlier this week, however, President Obama, he apparently sees a difference because he's now reportedly saying that he sees no path to a peace agreement and is threatening to abandon Israel at the United Nations, which would reverse decades of history. What would that mean for Israel?
Well, I hope that's not true. And I think President Obama has said time and time again, as I've said, that the only path to a peace agreement is an agreement, a negotiated agreement. You can't impose it. You can't force the people of Israel, who've just elected me by a wide margin to bring them peace and security, to secure the state of Israel, to accept terms that would endanger the very survival of the state of Israel. I don't think that's the direction of American policy. I hope it's not.
Well, Claudia, he could be in for a big surprise, couldn't he?
I suspect that Israel is looking right now for ways to cope, but this is abandoning Israel. Even to have these sort of suggestions out there is sending a terrible message. And one thing, Neil, that really matters here, this sends a terrible message to our allies everywhere. We have a very jittery, nervous, dangerous world right now.
Well, Claudia, when a country abstains from a vote, let's say attacking, let's say, Israeli settlements, whatever it is at the moment, that's as damning as voting against it, right?
Yeah, that sends a message. The message that's being repeatedly sent, and would certainly be sent if we did that at the Security Council, it would also allow such a resolution to pass if we did not veto it, is that the U.S. is not behind one of its closest, most important democratic allies, that this is what, the process of throwing Israel to the wolves because the Israelis freely re-elected somebody the president doesn't like. Neil, this comes along with administration threats to bypass the U.S. Congress, which, remember, gave Israel's Netanyahu a very enthusiastic reception earlier this month, to bypass Congress with an Iran deal, should that emerge from these talks. Again, it's taking these things to the UN, which is unfriendly to Israel, hostile, actually, dangerous, and hostile to the U.S. in many cases, and friendly to interests such as that of Iran, to the Palestinians, again, who have not solved their own problems, part of whose territory is governed by a terrorist group. How do you make peace with that, precisely? And this is all being sort of offered as end runs to try and advance administration policy that's profoundly unpopular with our own Congress. This is a path to global governance. It's very dangerous, Neil, for all of us.
Troubling, very troubling. Claudia, thank you so much. I always enjoy chatting with you.